I choose to ignore the fish god's gaze most of the time. It depends on the situation. Hey everyone, this is Jared and MML. This is probably going to be something called like the sit down and review of Yogathaeg, the old god in the new patch, and I might as well have rounded it out, which is why I did it in the first place. So I'm going to mainly go over the gameplay aspect of the fish god, and pretty much go through every single mystery with it. I could talk about the characters, but it's not really a conversation for characters. What applies to one character pretty much applies to everyone else, except for Miku, of course, whose stats improve with High Doom. Kyrie might learn Expel Evil first, but that's a low chance, and everyone else may learn spells from events anyway. Mizuki might get Hermit as an ally as part of her passive, and yeah, there aren't many events where you can pick up an ally, so that's kind of special. Festival, you still have to rely on RNG, and indirectly, characters that have perks or advantages in encounters means that you don't need to run as much from encounters, and you can avoid Doom loss, but these are smaller details that can be heavily influenced by a lot of variables in RNG in a run. So let's focus on the Old God on specific mysteries because you want to pay attention to your investigations. That's how the Old God interacts with you. That's how you get the +2 Doom penalty. The one thing I haven't tested enough to be confident talking about is whether the locations are truly randomized. So it says that Yogathaeg is looking at 2 or 3 locations, or maybe not to blink, or if the fish god actually looks at sets of locations. So say it says that Yogathaeg is looking at forest and village, then is it always forest and village? Could it possibly be forest and school, forest and apartment? You know what I mean? Or is it only sets of cards? I haven't tested that out. Regardless, though, that doesn't change the fact that Yogathaeg can look at the same location twice. But it'd be nice information to know the specifics. And of course, yeah, if that becomes knowledge, then I'd like to learn. So some general tips for Yogathaeg that I personally like to do. If it helps anyone, I hope it helps. Otherwise, yeah. Keep an eye on threat levels. When you start a True Believer run, you'll always have 2 locations at low, 1 at dangerous, and 1 at doomed, or max threat level as I like to call it. And that's important because if you want to ignore the fish god or respect the fish god, you want to look at a different location or the location you're going into. You want to look at the threat level because on max threat level, most importantly, that causes an extra doom penalty on top of the 1 doom it takes to investigate a location. So this can help you determine whether or not you want to ignore the fish god's watch or whatnot, since investigating a location at max threat level then equals 2 doom instead of 1, on top of the event that you're already going into. Note that if you run into an encounter, your doom should only increase by 1, but you're in an encounter, so unless you can one-shot the enemy, you're taking damage or escaping. Though I guess if you're dying from doom, it's fine to take the encounter, but hoping to run into an encounter in a max threat level location is a pretty RNG idea, so yeah. But it can happen. I'm not going to say it can never happen. One last thing to note is that some mysteries with a thorough investigation bonus are dependent on side story investigations. Some people don't think much of 15 experience, others like leveling up in a run. To me, I mainly look at my doom and decide, and with Fish God, you know doom is going to be a possible factor in your death. Maybe you'll avoid Fish God's gaze and go for the thorough investigation while you're at it, so it's efficient. Maybe you're trying to do the side quest investigation, but the fish god is looking at your location. At least you can go to the main investigation, maybe, but still, it can happen. In any case, let's start. The footage you'll see on screen is going to be related to whatever mystery I'm talking about. We'll go through them in alphabetical order. You'll notice a pattern mainly based on the side quests of a mystery, but I still want to go over the mysteries in detail. You also have to pay attention to your backstory as well as the current situation you're in, but that can be a whole nother topic. We're talking about mysteries, but say you're on Knight Errant, then you want to pay attention to ending A. If you're on Ill-Fated, then you're going to fail every event when you avoid or respect Fish God, and so on and so forth. Let's get to it. So for arms, you have the hospital as a backup if you're not the type to ignore Fish God. So if the old god is looking at your main investigation location, you can go to hospital twice if it's not also under watch. I usually pick up the tiny key if I have scissors in the same run, and I don't have or think I'll have a good weapon for scissors. Otherwise, the tiny key is a nice pickup if you know you'll be doing school investigations in case you run into the trophy case event. And now that the goblet can be used as another out for a new otherworldly event, it might be worth the investigations at the hospital. Granted, it is RNG at that point. Usually, you'd avoid hospital if you want to rush through arms, say you are increasing on Doom, because that's 2 investigations you don't have to do, but under the effect of Fish God, I might think about visiting hospital if my main investigation is being watched. Mainly because of the possible use of the tiny key. Yes, I know it's RNG without scissors, but I think you have to wait with the 2% Doom if Ygothaeg is watching your main investigation, and hospital isn't under watch. Botanist, you need to do the school investigations if you want to fight Shiro-san properly. I wouldn't recommend it. So here, I might be inclined to just take the 2% Doom if Yogathaeg is watching one of my main investigations. Granted, you only need to do a few in-town investigations, so it might not be so bad, and once you're in the forest, you don't have to worry about the Fish God. Otherwise, if it is harassing you in town, you could do school investigations if they're free, since you do get the thorough investigation for doing these side quest investigations. I believe so. If not, then not, but I don't think it would I would on average, but this is something to think about. I don't think I would investigate the school on average, but 50% shiny experience if you do get thorough. As for Bulletin, the new mystery, it's pretty straightforward, though it does have 9 in-town investigations if I counted right. That means Fish God gets 9 chances at about to block you. Though you do have forest investigations for the side quest, and doing so gets you a free out for ending A. If you're on Knight Errant, it's ending A, so you don't take 7% Doom. I mean, minus whatever happens those 2 times in the forest, I would likely assume you're going to get blocked at some point and do the forest investigations. Unless the Fish God blocks the forest and the main investigation. In that case, I choose to ignore it, but you could investigate somewhere else and roll on RNG. I still would prefer to get ending A on Bulletin, so I probably would ignore the old god at that point. As for Cape and or Akamanto, well, it's one and the same, but it has no side investigation, so it's straightforward if we're talking about Fish God. Either it looks and you find somewhere else to go, or you ignore it. I guess you could purposely fail the side quest to get the mask and reduce Doom by 10%, but if you're on Knight Errant, that Doom reduction theoretically becomes only 3%. Other than this, not much else that can be said that isn't tiny details, but these are the kind of strats I would keep in mind when I'm going through Cape with Ygothaeg. As for Coma, you have 2 village investigations as your side quest, and Dust of Seeing isn't a bad item. If you're doing ending A for some reason, then you can definitely avoid Fish God. I might ignore it though if Village is at max threat level, because that is the 2% Doom for investigating Village twice, on top of the stamina reason modifiers against you because max threat level. My investigations here mainly depend on how much the Dust of Seeing will benefit me in the run. Again, Dust of Seeing lowers your enemy's power to 0, so if that's the difference between 100% chance to hit and not 100% chance, I would usually do so. Some people might because they roll on high RNG anyway, but it depends on the Dust of Seeing and whether or not the village is at max threat level. For me, anyway. For Eels, you only need to investigate Seaside once outside of main investigations to do the side quests. This means you have technically 1 free quote-unquote investigation if Fish God blocks you, although getting Kana helps you in encounters. No, really, that's it. Just having Kana for a whole run can make me ignore Fish God for the whole playthrough. 1 damage mitigation plays a huge factor in Survivor on True Believer runs. So yeah, though I have to remind myself you take -3 reason at the end if you want to save Coma, but damage mitigation though. So yeah, that's Eels in a nutshell for Ygothaeg. Festival, on the other hand, Fish God doesn't affect you in Festival, in out-of-town mystery. Granted, Festival in itself can be a huge Doom increase if Forest is at max threat level, but we can still talk about strats here because you can choose to rest in your room or in the onsen. If you have Festival in a run, you know you don't have to worry about Fish God for at least 1 mystery. This means you can safely rest once or twice for a little Doom game, and remember that you can visit the Festival to avoid village investigations at the very start of the mystery. After this, you rush through forest investigations unless you're about to die. Even then, most of the time, you'll come out of Festival alive, I believe. On average, Festival is a fresh breath of air for a Yogathaeg run. As for footage, only a few turns of main in-town investigations that Fish God can block, but RNG is RNG. You don't need to do the side quest investigation to complete this mystery comfortably. However, doing so also removes 3 squares during the forest phase. and being stuck in the forest means you don't have to worry about Fish God. I usually don't believe getting out quickly in the forest. I don't believe in getting out quickly in the forest phase, but I still ignore the Fish God during the in-town phase. To me, footage like Hell and Botanist is an RNG doomfest, but like I said, the side quest investigations are available for avoiding Fish God. Speaking of Hell, Hell is similar to footage where the side investigations don't affect the outcome of your mystery too much. Maybe if you want thorough investigation. Other than that, knowing there are only 4 in-town investigations, I might choose to ignore the Fish God. Unless I had Kana and a light source prepped, I speed through and ignored Fish God. Anyway, if I am prepped, you can technically still ignore the side investigations, since having the side quest items in your inventory isn't required to get ending A. But at this point, we're heading into talking about the Knight Errant backstory. What doing the side quest does do, aside from the thorough investigation, is save you real lifetime, which for speedrunners is a relevant point. Otherwise, I'd be more than happy to dial up the hertz by 1 for the sake of survival in-game and not investigating twice for the side quest. So that's Hell. For Mermaids, you have 2 free turns to do the side investigation if Fish God blocks you. The side investigation only nets you a thorough investigation, since ending A depends on defeating the boss. Although personally, Seaside has 2 encounters I don't like to fight, Drowner Sponge, and Class of 1971. And if these enemies are scaled too much based on the mystery you're on, and you're not prepared to fight, you're either running for 5 doom or taking a lot of damage. At the same time, Seaside does have Burning Man, I guess, which helps you clean up all the branches and broken bottles that you can keep to throw at other enemies. Then you have the choice of what to do for the boss of Mermaids, but that's something you can work around since you have the choice. If for some reason you do the crowbar strat and you open the manhole, there you go. If you fight the boss and you're on Knight Errant, you get ending A, or you just take burns. But you might not have a choice if you're dying, so you might just take the burns there. On average, I'll consider avoiding the Fish God's gaze on Mermaids, unless I'm lazy. Moving on to Ramen, and I'll throw Sailors in because, to me, they're both the same. Granted, they do have their differences, but I treat Ramen and Sailors the same because when I see Fish God, I think of side quests. Yes, Ramen does keep you in apartments to downtown, and Sailors kind of pushes you in more locations, but if Fish God blocks your main investigation, theoretically, it doesn't matter because that's all based on RNG, looking at what choices you have at that point. At that point, since you can't do anything reliably efficient with your time, compared to a mystery that has side quest investigations, your choice to avoid the Fish God is based on where you want to go. Note that I said reliably. You could technically go for an RNG strat for doing Ramen and Sailors by taking a non-main investigation in hopes of getting an item to throw away in an event if you don't have an item to throw away. If you decide to avoid the Fish God out of respect for the Doom penalty. Not really much else to say since details like this are small, but this is something I might think about when doing either of these mysteries. As for Scissors, like Festival, it's not affected by Fish God, unless it is somehow like Festival and Vigil. Yell at me in the comment section below. But unlike Festival, Scissors only has 5 investigations, counting the third that has a 66% chance to be an encounter. Well, I consider it that way because it's either Maru, the bloated swimmer, or the event at the rooftop. So you're guaranteed to spend less Doom and Scissors on average compared to Festival is the main point, where you might want to rest at least twice on top of the 5 forced investigations in Festival. Scissors, you're straight for doing 5 investigations. Bottom line, if you get Scissors and Yogathaeg, you can feel a little better about Doom, in my opinion. Unless school is your max threat level location. But at least you have other mysteries that don't have school investigations either. RNG at that point. Last but not least, we have Vigil. As the last out-of-town mystery, yes, you aren't affected by Fish God here. You are infected by the 8+ forced mansion investigation. Hope to the good gods of the game that mansion isn't your max threat level location. I'm pretty sure threat levels apply to Vigil, unless that changed, or that was never true. Still, it's 8 guaranteed Doom on top of the boss encounter if you decide to fight the boss for ending A. However, mansion location events do have a few free outs, possibly Katana, and there's a Doom decrease event when you know what option to pick. On top of general Fish God events decreasing Doom for stamina and or reason, the mansion encounters aren't too bad on average either, in my opinion. If Panstas ever allows Fish God to proc on out-of-town mysteries, I'd get a little sad. So, last thoughts on the matter. Last thing I can go over are the Fish God events themselves, but it's mainly, you're mainly see the -2 Doom for -2 stamina or reason. So, that's that. And on top of that, the general advice I gave at the beginning in terms of you can ignore Fish God and go into where it's looking anyway for the 2 Doom damage, or you respect it, and or you have a side investigation and you try to be efficient and you investigate some other location. At that point, like I said, I consider it RNG because the Fish God can look at the same location and you're just like, well, sitting there doing an ASCII shrug. So there's that. So that should be it for now. I could go over Yogathaeg with the characters. I kind of did in one of my sit-down reviews, but when I think of Yogathaeg, I look more at the mysteries themselves. And I could talk about the backstories, but yeah, at that point, the backstories, I think the mysteries are more important when you're looking at the new old god. So if you made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching. I don't know what else I would plan to do. I might just go back to challenges at this point, but we'll see what I do. I do want to play around more, and I do have a lot more content planned. I haven't even touched the mods yet, so, well, I have, but not in terms of recording actual footage. Anyway, if you have anything to say so in the comment section below. I'll take a look at it. Any questions or criticism, you know what to do. Again, if you want to support me, you also know what to do. So, that should be the end for now. I won't take up any more of your time. If you made it this far, I'd like to thank you once again. JRDN MML, I should be back.